Not everyone in your life is sent by God. That may be hard to hear, but it's a truth we've got to face if we're going to walk in the fullness of what God has prepared for us. The reality is, there are people walking with you right now. People you trust, people you lean on, people you've allowed into your most sacred spaces, that were never meant to be there. They weren't placed by divine appointment, they just showed up. And because they showed up at the right time, or said the right thing, or made you feel seen when you were feeling low, you let them in. But just because someone walks into your life doesn't mean they were sent by God. The devil can send people too. You see, Satan doesn't always come with a pitchfork and horns. Sometimes he comes through charm. Sometimes he comes through comfort. Sometimes he comes dressed as everything you thought you wanted, only to rob you of everything God is trying to build in your life. The enemy is cunning, and he knows that if he can't destroy you from the outside, he'll try to destroy you from the inside, through people, through connections that look good, feel good, but slowly, secretly pull you off course. He's not afraid to whisper through people who aren't aligned with God's word. People who carry bitterness, manipulation, envy, and pride right into your space. Not everyone who claps for you is for you. Not everyone who walks with you is walking toward the same destiny. Some people were sent to distract you. Some were sent to delay you. And some were sent to drain you. And God, in His mercy, will begin to shine a light on those relationships. He'll start showing you the truth. The conversations will start to feel different. The energy will shift. The smiles won't be the same. You'll begin to notice that every time you share your vision, they respond with doubt. Every time you speak of faith, they respond with fear. You'll begin to feel that something is off. And that is not coincidence. That is conviction. That is God beginning to peel back the layers, because He loves you too much to let you build your future on shaky ground. He loves you too much to let you anchor yourself to someone who can't go where He's taking you. The Bible is filled with examples of people who were surrounded by the wrong people. Samson had Delilah. She looked good, she spoke sweet, but she was never for him. She was planted to destroy his strength. Judas walked with Jesus, dined with him, served in his ministry, and yet he was the one who betrayed him. The presence of someone in your circle does not mean they have your best interest at heart. And God, who knows the end from the beginning, who sees what you cannot see, will begin to intervene, sometimes subtly, sometimes painfully, but always purposely. Now I know it hurts when God begins to remove people. It hurts when someone you loved turns away, when someone you trusted breaks your heart, when someone you counted on walks out the door. But hear me, God is not being cruel. He is being careful. He is being precise. He is doing spiritual surgery on your life. He is cutting away what doesn't belong. Not because He's trying to isolate you, but because He's trying to elevate you. And not everyone can handle your elevation. When God begins to take you higher, He knows who can breathe at that altitude, and some people, no matter how much you love them, can't go with you. They don't have the character. They don't have the commitment. They don't have the capacity. And God, in His wisdom, will not let them contaminate what He's trying to do through you. So He removes them, not always by force, sometimes just by revealing who they really are. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. That's not punishment. That's protection. You've got to get to a place in your spiritual walk where you stop begging people to stay that God is trying to remove. You've got to stop holding the door open for people who are meant to leave. Because every time you try to keep what God is removing, you delay what God is releasing. Every time you hold onto the wrong person, you forfeit the blessing of the right ones. God has divine connections lined up for you. People who will pray for you, people who will sharpen you, people who will speak life into you when you're down. but they can't enter your life while you're still making room for people who were never supposed to be there. Some relationships are not assignments, they're attachments, and you've got to discern the difference. You've got to get bold enough to say, Lord, if they're not from you, take them out of my life. That takes courage. That takes obedience, but it also takes faith. Faith to believe that your future is better with less of what's wrong, even if it means walking through a season of loneliness. Faith to believe that when God subtracts, He's making space to multiply. Faith to believe that even when you don't understand why someone left, God knows what you don't. Because not everyone in your life is sent by God. Some are allowed for a season, but not meant for the journey. Some were there to teach you, not to travel with you, and when that season ends, let it end. Because the longer you entertain the wrong people, the longer you delay the right purpose. God removes to protect, not to punish. That's a truth we often overlook when life starts to feel like it's falling apart. When people we care about leave without warning, when doors slam shut that we were so sure God had opened. Our hearts break, our plans fall to pieces, and we begin to wonder what we did wrong. But friend, let me tell you, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes it's not about what you've done, it's about what God is trying to prevent, because He sees the things you can't see. He hears conversations you were never meant to hear. He knows the motives behind every smile, the intentions behind every handshake, and the spirit behind every relationship. And when He removes someone from your life, it's not always a sign of divine disappointment. It's often a sign of divine protection. We live in a world where people constantly talk about favor, blessing, and increase, but we don't talk enough about the pruning, the part of God's process where He takes things away, the part where He allows disappointment to hit you, not to destroy you, but to detour you away from danger. God isn't just the God who opens doors, He's the God who closes them too. He's the God who says no when you're begging for a yes, because He knows what's on the other side of that door. He's the God who ends relationships that felt right, because He sees that 5 years down the line, that same relationship would have cost you your peace, your purpose, and maybe even your soul. You see, when God removes, it's always strategic. He doesn't do it out of anger. He doesn't do it to punish you or make you suffer. He does it because He knows what's ahead. He does it because He loves you too much to let you settle. We cry over people walking away, but sometimes their absence is the loudest blessing God could give us. That silence, that emptiness you feel when someone leaves isn't just loss. Sometimes it's relief you haven't recognized yet. It's protection in disguise. Think about it. How many times have you looked back at a situation, a friendship, a relationship you once mourned, only to realize later that it was the best thing that could have ever happened to you? At the time, it felt like betrayal. It felt like abandonment, but in hindsight, you can see it clearly. God stepped in, He shut it down. He took something you thought you needed because He knew it was never going to bring you life. We serve a God who not only gives, but who takes away. And when He does, it's for your good. The problem is, we interpret His protection as punishment because we don't have the full picture yet. Just like a parent who yanks their child away from traffic, even if the child screams and cries, not because the parent is cruel, but because they see what the child doesn't see. God will yank you out of places, situations, and relationships where you are in danger and don't even know it. That danger may not be physical. It could be spiritual. It could be emotional. It could be the slow erosion of your confidence, your joy, your calling, and God steps in and says, "No, this ends here." Sometimes the protection comes wrapped in pain. Sometimes it feels like heartbreak. Sometimes it looks like being laid off, or someone ghosting you, or a door closing that you were sure was your breakthrough. But protection doesn't always come with a warning. It comes with faith that even though it hurts, it's part of something higher. Faith that even though it doesn't feel good, it is good because God is good. He protected Joseph when his brothers threw him into a pit. It didn't look like protection. It looked like betrayal. But that pit kept him from being destroyed by brothers who didn't understand his calling. He protected David by taking him out of Saul's palace and into the wilderness. It didn't feel like protection. It felt like rejection. But the wilderness built the heart of a king. He protected Paul by blinding him on the road to Damascus. That doesn't sound like protection, but that moment of blindness became the birth of his real vision. We want God's promises, but we often resist His protection, especially when it doesn't come the way we expected. We want blessings to be additions, not subtractions. But God sometimes protects by subtracting. He will subtract people who are secretly sabotaging your spirit. He will subtract opportunities that look like gold but are wrapped in compromise. He will subtract dreams that are more about your ego than His glory. And when He does, we must trust that it's not punishment, it's preparation. The truth is, God's protection is an act of love, a holy boundary drawn around your purpose. He's not just interested in your comfort. He's interested in your calling. He's not just keeping you from harm. He's preserving you for destiny. You might be praying, God, why are they leaving me? When heaven is declaring, I'm saving you. That relationship, that friendship, that connection, it may have felt right, but if it was keeping you from becoming who He called you to be, then it had to go. And here's something else. If God let it fall apart, you better believe He has a better plan. He never removes without intending to replace. But the replacement doesn't always come immediately. Sometimes He has to give you space to detox, to unlearn, to heal, because the wrong person can twist your thinking, distort your value, and cause you to question your worth. And before He brings the right people into your life, He wants you whole. He wants you ready. He wants you clear, minded enough to recognize who is truly sent by Him. So when He removes someone or something, trust that it's not divine punishment. It's divine protection. He's shielding you from what you cannot yet comprehend. He's clearing the path, cleaning the atmosphere, making room for something greater, something healthier, something holy. Separation is often preparation. When God begins to separate you from certain people, places, or patterns, it can feel confusing. It can feel like abandonment. You start to question everything, your decisions, your path, even your faith. But the truth is, when God separates you, He's not trying to isolate you just for the sake of being alone. He's getting you ready. He's preparing you for something greater, something deeper, something more aligned with His purpose for your life. And preparation rarely happens in comfort. It happens in consecration. It happens in the quiet. It happens in the lonely places where you begin to see clearly, hear clearly, and grow beyond the distractions that once surrounded you. When God is getting ready to use you, He starts by pulling you away. It's a pattern throughout Scripture. Before Joseph was elevated to power, he was separated from his family, sold into slavery, thrown into prison. That separation was painful. It was unjust, but it was preparing him to carry a mantle that required strength, patience, and vision. Moses was separated from Egypt, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. He had to spend years in the wilderness, away from the noise, away from the culture, away from the palace, because the palace taught him how to act like a prince, but the wilderness taught him how to lead like a prophet. Jesus himself, before beginning his public ministry, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. For 40 days he fasted, he was alone, he was tested. That separation was preparation for the power he would soon walk in. There is something about being alone with God that builds you in ways no crowd ever could. The applause of people may validate you temporarily, but the approval of God prepares you permanently. You don't get anointing in a spotlight, you get it in solitude. We often resist separation because we confuse proximity with purpose. Just because someone has been close to you doesn't mean they're meant to go with you into your next season. Some people were part of your history, but have no place in your destiny. And when God starts to move you forward, He'll begin to highlight those connections. Conversations will start to shift. The closeness you once felt will begin to fade, and you'll feel the tug, the spiritual nudge that something is changing. That's not a coincidence. That's preparation. That's God saying, you can't take this with you where you're going. But preparation isn't just about who God separates you from. It's also about what He separates you for. He sets you apart for something holy, something significant, something that requires a level of focus and faith that can't be cultivated in the crowd. The crowd will cheer for you one moment and crucify you the next. But when you've been separated for God's purpose, you're no longer moved by the noise. You're anchored in the call. You're grounded in truth. You're prepared for battle because you've already fought the war inside. There's something powerful that happens when you stop fighting separation and start embracing it. You begin to see it not as rejection but as refinement, not as loneliness but as leadership training. Because leadership often begins in obscurity. David was anointed to be king, but he went back to tending sheep. Nobody saw him, nobody celebrated him. But out there in the fields, alone with God, he learned how to fight lions and bears. He learned how to worship in the dark. He learned how to trust God without a title. That was his preparation. So when he stood before Goliath, he didn't flinch, because he'd already faced bigger threats when no one was watching. God will do the same with you. He'll pull you back so He can push you forward. He'll strip you of crutches so you learn to stand on faith. He'll silence the voices around you so you can hear the whisper of His Spirit. It may feel like everything is being taken away, but really you're being equipped. You're being sharpened. You're being aligned, because what He's preparing you for requires more than talent. It requires character. It requires discernment. It requires a heart that's fully His. And sometimes God will even separate you from a version of yourself. The version that was insecure. The version that was dependent on approval. The version that tolerated less than what you deserve. He'll begin to pull you away from patterns of thought, habits, and mindsets that no longer fit who you're becoming. Because preparation isn't just about what's around you. It's about what's within you. God will clean house inside your soul before He builds a platform beneath your feet. He will not bless who you pretend to be. He blesses the you that's surrendered, separated, and sanctified for His use. Separation teaches you to depend on Him, to trust Him when you can't trace Him, to walk by faith when there's no confirmation, and in that space, where it's just you and God, that's where the oil flows. That's where the calling becomes clear. That's where your roots grow deep so that when the winds of life come, you won't be moved. Because you weren't built in the spotlight, you were built in secret. You may be wondering why people are walking away, why old friends aren't calling, why the room feels emptier than it used to. Don't panic, don't chase, don't mourn over what God is removing, because if He's separating you, He's preparing you. If He's pulling you back, it's only to launch you further. The breaking is part of the making, the silence is part of the shaping. The loneliness is not the end, it's the beginning of something sacred. Rejection is God's redirection. It doesn't feel like it in the moment. When you're sitting with tears in your eyes, wondering why they didn't choose you, why they walked away, why the opportunity slipped through your fingers, it doesn't feel like divine intervention. It feels like failure. It feels like abandonment. It feels like a door that was slammed in your face when your heart was wide open. But what we often call rejection, heaven calls protection. What we see as a loss, God sees as a rerouting. Because He knows what's around the corner. He knows the plans He has for you. And sometimes the only way to get you on the right path is to allow the wrong one to close. There are times when God will let you get turned down, not because you're not qualified, not because you're not ready, but because He's trying to keep you from wasting time in a place that doesn't align with your purpose. That job you didn't get, maybe it would have paid well, but robbed you of peace. That relationship that ended, maybe it felt like love, but it was never rooted in truth. That platform you were denied, maybe it looked like elevation, but it would have come at the cost of your integrity. God is not just guiding you toward what's good. He's protecting you from what looks good but isn't God. We cry over closed doors, but rarely do we thank God for the ones He locked. You see, God is not obligated to explain His redirections. He's not required to give you a play-by-play. He leads by faith, not by full disclosure. He allows rejection to do the holy work of reordering your steps. Rejection gets your attention. Rejection wakes you up. Rejection breaks attachments to things you never would have let go of on your own. It's not a comfortable process, but it's a necessary one, because we often hold on to the familiar long after it has expired. And sometimes God has to use rejection to make you release what you were never supposed to cling to. Jesus Himself experienced rejection. He came to His own, and His own received Him not. The very people He came to save didn't believe in Him. The religious leaders mocked Him. The crowds who praised Him on Sunday were crying, "Crucify Him," by Friday. But none of that rejection stopped His mission. It fulfilled it. What looked like rejection from man was redirection from God, leading Him to the cross, to the resurrection, to the redemption of all mankind. If Jesus had to face rejection as part of His assignment, don't be surprised when you do too. But know this, if rejection couldn't derail Him, it won't derail you. God uses rejection to refine your faith, to break your dependency on people's approval, to train your spirit to listen for His voice, not theirs. Sometimes He'll even let the thing you were praying for pass you by, so you can learn to trust His plan more than your preferences. That person you thought was the one might leave, not because something's wrong with you, but because something better is waiting for you. And if they had stayed, they would have distracted you, delayed you, or drawn you away from who you're becoming. Rejection is not a curse. It's a course correction. It redirects your energy. It realigns your vision. It removes options so that you're forced to focus on what matters. When everything is available, it's easy to drift. But when a door shuts, your attention sharpens. You start asking God the right questions. You start seeking Him instead of settling for surface-level answers. That's the beauty of divine redirection. It doesn't always make sense right away, but it always makes you stronger. Sometimes rejection isn't even about you. It's about the assignment on your life. It's about the people you're called to reach, the mission you're called to fulfill. And in order to do that, you have to be free from needing the applause of man. God will allow rejection to strip you of codependency, of fear, of insecurity. He'll let it humble you so He can elevate you in a way that won't crush you under pressure. Because when your identity is rooted in Him, rejection from others doesn't shake you. It shapes you. David was rejected by his own father when Samuel came looking for a king. He wasn't even invited into the room, but God saw him, God chose him. That rejection didn't disqualify him. It positioned him. Esther wasn't born into royalty. She wasn't the obvious choice, but God used her because he had already orchestrated the redirection. Paul was rejected in city after city, beaten, imprisoned, and cast out. But every rejection became a new destination, a new audience, a new testimony. That's how God works. He takes what man throws away and builds something glorious out of it. So if you've been rejected, let your heart rest. Don't internalize it. Don't rehearse it. Don't let it define your worth. Instead, ask God, what are you redirecting me toward? Because every no is leading to a better yes. Every closed door is pointing to the one that was custom built for you. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. You're not being overlooked. You're being overseen by the one who writes perfect stories. People are not always meant to stay forever. We often build our lives, our dreams, and our expectations around the idea that those who start the journey with us will be there when we cross the finish line. We tie our emotions to individuals who walked with us during a certain season, and we assume that because they were there at the beginning, they must be meant for the end. But the truth is, not everyone is assigned to your entire story. Some people are placed in your life for a chapter, not the whole book. And when God starts to shift things, when people start to walk away, when connections begin to fade, it's not always something gone wrong. Sometimes it's something going right. It takes maturity to accept that even good people can be seasonal. It takes wisdom to understand that their eggs, it doesn't always require an explanation. Their time in your life had a purpose. It taught you something. It shaped you. It gave you joy or tested your patience or forced you to grow. But when that purpose has been fulfilled, God may begin to move them out of your space, not out of spite, but out of strategy. Because where God is taking you next, you need room, you need clarity. You need people whose hearts beat in rhythm with the vision He's given you. The danger comes when we try to force permanence out of what was always supposed to be temporary. We hold on to friendships that have expired. We chase relationships that God is no longer blessing. We try to keep people around out of loyalty, even when the connection has turned toxic. But what we don't realize is that the longer we hold on to what God is removing, the more we delay our own growth. God isn't asking you to be cold-hearted. He's asking you to be obedient. He's asking you to recognize when the grace for a relationship has lifted. And that's not bitterness, that's discernment. There are people you outgrow not because you're better than them, but because God is expanding your capacity. He's stretching your thinking, your faith, your purpose. And not everyone will want to grow with you. Some people are comfortable in comfort. They're content with familiarity, but the call on your life requires movement. It requires sacrifice. It requires letting go of anything or anyone that anchors you to a past season. And if you don't release them, you risk becoming stuck in a place you were never meant to settle. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave his country, his people, and his father's household. That wasn't easy. But it was necessary because God was calling him to a promise that required separation. Even Lot, who traveled with him in the beginning, couldn't stay with him forever. There came a point where their paths had to diverge. And only after that separation did God speak again to Abraham, renewing the promise, expanding the vision. Sometimes the next word from God won't come until after you've made the necessary separation. Because obedience opens clarity, Jesus also understood this principle. He ministered to crowds, healed multitudes, poured into his disciples, but even within that circle, there was a level of separation. He had 12 disciples, but only 3, Peter, James, and John, were brought into the most intimate moments, like the Mount of Transfiguration, and even among those 3, he had private moments alone with the Father, not because he didn't love everyone else, but because he knew that not everyone could handle every dimension of the assignment. If Jesus, in his perfection, discerned the need for layers of relationship, how much more should we? It's painful, though, when people leave, especially when you don't expect it, especially when you believed they'd be there forever. It hurts when someone you trusted suddenly grows distant, when someone you confided in becomes a stranger, when someone you envisioned in your future is no longer present in your present. But pain is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's the natural result of growth. A tree shedding its leaves in fall isn't dying. It's making space for new life, and your life, your calling, your journey with God will require similar shedding. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop limiting yourself to keep them comfortable. It means you honor what they were without forcing what they're not meant to be. Some people were meant to help you survive the storm, but not to build with you in the calm. Some were sent to teach you lessons, not to take the next leap with you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean the time was wasted. It means it was purposeful, but now it's complete. We also must be careful not to resent those who leave. Their exit may be painful, but their departure may be the very thing God uses to shift you forward. If they hadn't left, maybe you wouldn't have prayed as deeply. Maybe you wouldn't have discovered your strength. Maybe you wouldn't have heard God so clearly. Their absence became the space where God's presence grew stronger. Their silence created room for revelation, and what felt like abandonment became divine alignment. You see, people come into our lives for reasons and seasons. Some come to water seeds, others to help with the harvest, and some simply to walk with us until we're ready to stand alone. The problem comes when we confuse seasonal people with lifetime assignments. We get disappointed, frustrated, even bitter, because we gave forever to someone God only intended to be temporary. But the faster we recognize the difference, the more peace we'll walk in. Not every loss is a tragedy. Some losses are transitions. Your destiny is too important to let misplaced loyalty or emotional confusion keep you bound. God is trying to elevate you, stretch you, enlarge your territory, but elevation requires separation. It requires discernment. It requires the courage to release hands that no longer walk in agreement with your purpose. And when you trust that God is the author of your connections, you can trust that He's also the editor. He writes people in, He writes people out, not to harm you, but to help you become who He created you to be. Sometimes God has to break your heart to save your soul. It's not a truth we like to talk about. We prefer the image of a God who comforts, who blesses, who opens doors and answers prayers just the way we ask. But the God of the Bible is not only a healer, He's also a refiner, and refinement is painful. Sometimes the most loving thing God can do is allow your heart to break if it means it will open your eyes, because a broken heart, as unbearable as it feels, can become the very thing that leads you to wholeness. We chase people, we chase love, we chase dreams that were never designed to carry the weight of our worth. And when those things fall apart, we cry out, wondering why God didn't stop it. Why didn't He make them stay? Why didn't He make it work? Why didn't He let the relationship continue, the friendship last, the plan succeed? But God, in His mercy, sometimes has to let what we want collapse so we can finally turn to what we need. He allows heartbreak to reroute us. He lets the thing that we idolized fall apart so we can remember who really holds our identity. A heart that breaks before God is a heart that becomes moldable. In brokenness, we become honest. In brokenness, we drop the performance. In brokenness, we stop pretending we've got it all figured out. That's where God does his deepest work, not in our strength, but in our surrender. The people we thought we couldn't live without walk away, and we realize the only one who never leaves is the one we've been neglecting. And suddenly our prayers get real, our worship gets raw, our faith gets deep. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is exposed. And in that exposure, God builds something new. You may have trusted someone who betrayed you. You may have loved with all you had and still got left behind. You may have sacrificed, prayed, stayed loyal, and it still ended in pain, but don't think for a second that God didn't see it. Don't think he didn't hear your cries or feel your ache. He did, and even when it seemed like he was silent, he was working. Because sometimes he has to let the thing you thought you needed walk away, so you can discover that he is more than enough. The heart is deceptive, the Bible says. We can convince ourselves that something is right, even when the Spirit is whispering that it's not. We can overlook red flags, excuse bad behavior, justify unhealthy patterns, all because we want it so badly. But God isn't moved by our desperation. He's moved by his purpose. And if what we're clinging to is pulling us away from his will, he loves us too much to let us stay there. So he breaks our heart, not to destroy us, but to detach us, to unhook us from the thing that's stealing our joy, our peace, our destiny. When God breaks your heart, he doesn't abandon you. He stays with you in the pain. He sits with you in the silence. He collects every tear. He binds up the wounds, but he also lets the wound cut deep enough that it changes you. Because real transformation doesn't happen through comfort. It happens through crisis. It's in the heartbreak that your priorities shift. It's in the heartbreak that you stop settling. It's in the heartbreak that your eyes are opened to things you were blind to before, and God begins to reveal who he is, not just as provider, not just as healer, but as the lover of your soul. We often think we need a person to feel whole, but what if God allows your heart to break so you can learn that no person can complete what only he can fulfill? We put pressure on people to give us identity, values, security, and when they can't carry that weight, everything falls apart. That's not because they were bad, it's because they were never meant to take God's place. And until your soul finds its anchor in him, every other connection will leave you unstable. A broken heart humbles you. It teaches you to rely on God, not just emotionally, but completely. It breaks the illusion of control. It forces you to admit your need, and in that space of desperation, God draws near. The Bible says he is close to the brokenhearted. He doesn't rush the healing. He doesn't shame the pain, but he does use it. He uses it to shape you, to strengthen you, to sanctify you. The pain becomes the soil where new purpose grows. You may not see it now, but there will come a time when you'll look back and realize that what broke you also built you. You'll see how the tears watered something in your spirit that had long been dry. You'll understand that the separation was necessary, the ending was protection, the heartbreak was holy, because it wasn't just a relationship that ended, it was a redirection to something deeper, a deeper awareness of who God is, a deeper confidence in who you are, a deeper understanding of what love is really supposed to look like. God doesn't just want to patch up your broken heart. He wants to renew it, to rebuild it with wisdom, with peace, with discernment, to make you whole, not through another person, but through his presence. And when he does that work, when he fills those broken places with himself, you won't need someone to complete you. You'll walk in the fullness of who you were created to be. That kind of healing doesn't erase the memory, but it transforms the meaning. What once symbolized pain becomes a testimony of grace. What once felt like loss becomes a doorway to greater life, and what once looked like devastation becomes the very thing that led you to true restoration. You've been through some painful goodbyes. You've watched people walk away, doors close, relationships crumble, and plans fall apart. You've stood in the silence wondering what went wrong, asking God why He allowed it, why He didn't step in sooner, why the people you loved the most turned out to be the ones who hurt you the deepest. But I came to tell you today, it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It wasn't the enemy winning, it was God working. He saw what you couldn't see. He heard conversations behind closed doors. He knew their motives before you caught their pattern. And because He loves you, He stepped in. He intervened. He removed what would have derailed you. And yes, it broke your heart, but it saved your future. Sometimes we don't recognize protection because it comes dressed as pain. We think that if it hurts, it must not be from God. But He is a father, and like any good father, He disciplines, He prunes, and yes, He removes, not to harm us, but to heal us, not to diminish us, but to define us. Because you can't carry your calling surrounded by confusion. You can't walk into destiny yoked to disorder. You can't build a future God has planned with people who are still tied to a past He's delivered you from. Let them go, let the season go, let the bitterness go. You don't need closure when you have clarity, and God has already made it clear if they walked, if they shifted, if they turned on you or turned away. It wasn't your loss, it was your launch. It was your moment to be set free. You didn't lose your worth when they left. You didn't lose your calling when they stopped believing in you. You didn't lose your favor because the room rejected you. Your identity was never rooted in their acceptance. It's rooted in God's assignment and what He has spoken over your life. No person, no betrayal, no separation, no rejection can cancel. You may feel like you're standing in the ruins of what could have been. You may feel alone, misunderstood, even abandoned. But that's where God does His best work. In the silence, in the empty spaces, in the aftermath, He begins to rebuild. He begins to restore. He begins to place the right people in your path. People who don't compete with your purpose. People who don't drain your spirit. People who speak life, walk in truth, and honor the call of God on your life. Don't resent the ones who left. Bless them, release them, pray for them, but don't chase them. If God removed them, He knew they couldn't go where you're going. The next chapter of your life requires focus. It requires faith. It requires a circle that sharpens and not stabs, that uplifts and not undermines. And if God has to take you through a season of separation to prepare you for a season of elevation, trust that He knows what He's doing. You weren't created to live broken. You weren't created to stay stuck. You were created to rise, and every person who walked away, every door that closed, every plan that failed, it was setting the stage for your comeback. God is not just healing your heart. He's revealing your strength. He's not just taking away. He's making room. And when it's His time to bless you, to elevate you, to surround you with the right people and position you for the promise, there won't be confusion. There won't be manipulation. There won't be compromise. There will be peace. There will be alignment. There will be favor. So stand strong. Wipe your tears. Lift your head. This is not the end of your story. It's the turning point. The heartbreak, the loneliness, the rejection. It was all a setup for restoration. You're stepping into a new season, one marked by divine relationships, by purpose, filled connections, by clarity and confidence and wholeness. You're not who you used to be, and you're not going back to what broke you. God is moving, God is shifting, God is building, and He's doing it through every no, every goodbye, and every door that had to close for your destiny to open. He will take the wrong people out of your life, not to leave you empty, but to make room for the right ones, not to hurt you, but to help you grow, not to break you, but to bring you into the fullness of who He made you to be. So trust the removal, embrace the redirection, and walk boldly into your next season, knowing that every loss has already been woven into the victory God prepared for you. Because when God is for you, it doesn't matter who left. The right people will show up, the right doors will open, the right future will unfold, and it will all make sense in the hands of the one who never let go.